The Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi is in studio. He's been carried over. We have Sue, and Utica is going to be asking. She has 4 questions. First, before that, what's your comment?
Mr. Zecca, just responding to
Jim Zecca.
the interview earlier. Here's one, just before the break. I see now Bill is screening what people have to say, and then why is Brindisi thanking the governor for money the taxpayers have given us for projects that the governor... That was it.
All right, we're going to get into that. I want to get into that, but before, I'm not screening what people can and cannot say. It's not like it doesn't work that way. However, I don't think that, and I'm not going to allow Sue from Utica to call in again and make slanderous remarks that are vile against anyone, and that includes the Assemblyman sitting here. I'm not going to subject him to that and allow it to happen. So if she's respectful and asks valid questions, not questions that are pro-Brindisi, you can ask any question you want, but it has to be a valid question and not slanderous and vile. That's all I'm saying. And, Sue, as long as you follow those rules, I'm not going to dump you.
It's true for Mr. Brindisi also.
What?
And, are we going to play with the volume?
Listen, I'm not going to argue with you
just
about
ask your
this.
question,
Ask
please,
your
Sue. You got 4
thinking questions, and he'll answer them. Question 1 is what?
Okay, question 1 is, he was just endorsed by a gun grab organization, the Gifford.
Okay, former Congresswoman, you've asked that question, so I'm going to give him a chance. Why you were just endorsed by Gabby Gifford? She, of course, was the one who was shot in that shooting. How many years ago? Her husband is an astronaut with NASA, and they have a group looking for gun legislation. They endorsed you. What's your thoughts on? What are your thoughts?
Giffords is a congresswoman who was nearly assassinated when she was in Congress. Someone who believes and supports the Second Amendment. They support universal background checks, which I support. They are an organization that is, as part of the endorsement. I'm very clear. I don't support ban on any kind of firearm. That's not part of it. But things like universal background checks, things like mental health or school safety, things like someone having to wait to purchase a firearm or a long gun for a few days is not something that I think is a bad thing. The goal here is to not restrict the kinds of firearms that people own, but make sure that the kinds of firearms that can do mass harm don't get into the hands of people that want to commit mass shootings.
Okay. Sue, your next question. Go ahead.
You're manipulating the conversation because you didn't even allow...
It's my
Sue,
show,
can you
Sue.
just ask
please,
the questions, please?
Ask the question. You have no choice but to abide by my rules. Next question.
So, here's my next question. He's worried about the violence. He's worried about this. He's worried about that. Why isn't he concerned when he votes and co-sponsors a bill on abortion, A-1748, that takes away the rights of babies who survive abortion to die on the table?
All right. What is this?
The bill that I supported, and personally, look, I believe I am pro-life, but I don't want to restrict a woman's right to choose. The bill that she's referencing allows a woman to seek an abortion if it's the fetus is not viable, or if it's in the health and safety of the mother. I'm not going to say that someone has to can't seek an abortion if their life depends on it. So I think it should be between a woman and her health care provider to make those decisions. That's all the bill does.
Bill, that is not the bill. That is not the bill. A-1748 strips away the rights of any baby that is surviving an abortion, that has survived an abortion, no medical access. Before, there had to be 2 doctors present in a room, one to do the abortion and one to give life-saving measures if that baby survived.
All right, let's let him respond to that.
The bill simply codifies Roe v. Wade and takes the abortion law, which was passed in New York State prior to Roe v. Wade, out of the penal law, which is the criminal law, and puts it under the health law, which is where it should be. In the case of the health or safety of the mother, or if the fetus is not viable, the woman has the right to choose whether or not she seeks an abortion. And that's a decision I believe should be left to the mother and her health care provider.
All right, next question, Sue.
Okay, no, we're not done with Ellen because he's lying. He's not.
Listen, Sue, in your eyes, he's lying. We get that point. Next question.
And one more statement. He cannot be Catholic, pro-life, and vote for this.
Okay. Are you Catholic?
I am Catholic, and I do consider myself pro-life. Just because I don't seek an abortion or will want that for my wife does not mean that am going to go out there and tell someone else that they don't have a right to choose that. I don't think that there should be abortions in the later trimesters unless it should be for the health or safety of the mother.
Okay.
If the
And I'll
fetus is
say,
not viable.
Sue, as a regular practicing Roman Catholic who lectures at church, I'm pro-choice. I'll say that.
Sue, your next.
Be a Catholic there.
Sue, your next question, please. I can only handle this so much. I'm going to leave today with a headache. Your next question.
And my next question is was regarding paying for the crisis. Which enters into the generations that we are going to have because of the pro-abortion stance that Mr. Brindisi has taken. But on the Gifford endorsement, you say you're pro-gun, you're pro-life, but your record shows total opposite. It's totally contrary. When you accept an endorsement from Gifford.
Okay. Didn't we already talk about this? What is your next question? You have one final question.
That was it.
Okay, so it's a statement, not a question.
Statement.
Okay.
Because I think Mr. Brindisi has a lot of answering to. He cannot usurp God's law if he is a Catholic. He cannot go for communion, and I will make sure that the bishop takes care of that.
All right. Well, I'm sure you have the power, and I'm sure you've done a great disservice to Claudia Tenney here today, to be honest. But thank you, Sue, for that call. Do you want to comment any further?
There's really nothing else I could say.
Okay.
I think I know who this caller is. And
you do. And I got to tell you, let's just set the record straight here. I thought we've asked you some pretty tough questions today. I opened up on the question on your family law firm, which is a story out there. Secondly, we do not screen people. We certainly screen calls, so I know who's calling in. It's not about trying to protect Anthony Brindisi. We've asked you questions on guns. The only reason I don't have Claudia Tenney on here is because she refuses to come on. We continuously ask her, you come on. When we ask you, you're here. When we ask you about topics you might not necessarily want to talk about, you're here. And for that, I appreciate it. One final note, Andrew has a comment on something that you said earlier involving mental illness.
As somebody who's been diagnosed as somebody with mental illness, something you said actually just made me think for the first time. It's the first time I've heard it. When you were talking about mental illness, you said keeping guns out of the hands of violently mental ill.
Right.
Did you say that?
I did.
Why did you say that?
I actually believe, and I was corrected myself, and I think obviously this is an important distinction. Not everyone who has mental illness is going to go out and commit a crime. Most do not. So when you talk about keeping guns out of the hands of criminals or the violently mentally ill, someone said to me, please say violently mentally ill, someone in the mental health community, because you don't want to stigmatize everyone with mental illness, which I agree 100%. So when I speak about keeping guns out of the hands of the violently mentally ill, I always say that word, violently mentally ill, because that is the trend that we've seen commit these kinds of crimes. Just because you have mental illness does not mean you're going out to commit some kind of a gun crime.
I just wanted to point that out that you said that. I never heard it said like that. So.
Could you clarify one final thing? I know you have to go. The bill that Senator Griffo has co-sponsored, and that is a bill that would does it make mandatory that an attack on a police officer, EMT, or a firefighter, it would be mandatory a hate crime? And second part of that is, don't we already have laws in place that if someone attacks someone else and it's based on beliefs and it's based on hate, that we can already charge them? A judge can, or a DA's office can already charge a hate crime.
You can already charge. I think what this does is, depending on the level of the crime, it can then be elevated to a hate crime.
It wouldn't be mandatory. It would give it the opportunity to be
elevated. I
elevated.
think it gives discretion to the district attorney to be able to charge under certain sections of the penal law for certain hate crimes if it's an attack on a police officer, an EMT, a firefighter.
Makes
sense. There have been a lot of cases where they have been attacked. Specifically because they are first responders.
Who they are. Understood. And Steve, how quickly, he's got to go, but I wanted to squeeze you in with a question.
It's actually more of just a statement. I just wanted to say that Bill, I think this is the first time I've ever called in as a caller. But,
it is, yeah.
I just want to say that, I've been reading a lot. In fact, I think yesterday was a letter to the editor in the OD about, Mr. Brindisi not talking about guns. And so I can't remember, he's talked so many times about it on your show. Either nobody's listening to your show or
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
choosing to ignore.
Clearly, the guy from Rome doesn't listen to us because had he would have known. So,
Right, and I mean, I think as actually Mr. Brindisi and I probably have a very similar take on guns, and so I've been a cop for a long time, and I think that I certainly lean right of center. So I certainly don't think he's got any radical opinions. I think most gun owners would agree with his stance on guns. To be honest with you.
all right, Steve, we appreciate the phone call.
Well,
Anytime.
the caller before Steve and the letter to the editor, that's a talking point that Tenny's putting out there. No one ever asked him about guns. I've been on this show talking about guns. I was on a Binghamton radio show a couple weeks ago talking about guns. I'm not hiding on this issue. I'm talking about it. So that's something I'll continue to do as a member of Congress. I'm always going to be. I've always been out there doing these kinds of things, accessible to the public, which is what we don't have right now.
Go. I know you got to go, and we're holding you up, and I apologize for that. Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi. Quick break.